If you've played a lot of Nuzlocks, you might have noticed that some Pokemon are just consistently way better than others. Gyarados is available as a fishing encounter in almost any region, and once you raise that Magikarp to level 20, it becomes insane, with great stats, an amazing typing, and in later games, a great move pool, and even a Mega Evolution. Swampert is one of the most insane starters in the entire series, its only weakness being grass, but there actually being no boss fights in the entirety of Hoenn that use grass-type Pokemon. Snorlax is incredibly good both defensively and offensively and is often a free encounter in your Nuzlocke if you allow it. It can counter pretty much any Pokemon in the game with its insane special defense stat. Early game Magnemites or Geodudes just completely destroy all of the early game normal types, flying types, or bug types that you run into in most regions. And Dragon Dancing Dragons can just sweep entire Elite Fours if you manage to set them up. There's one non-legendary that just stands above all those others, though, for me. So much that I've actually decided to ban it entirely from my Nuzlocke. Blissey is one of the most popular defensive options in competitive and has been ever since its release in GSC. It started getting my attention at first when I started playing Gen 4 competitive way back in the Diamond and Pearl era. It's not an all-rounder like Swampert or Gyarados that just does everything pretty well. It's both pretty defensive, both pretty offensive. It has very polarizing weaknesses and strengths. It has the highest HP pool of any Pokemon you can get in Nuzlocke. It has a very high special defense stat and extremely low defense, mediocre offense on paper. Pretty straightforward Pokemon, and usually these Pokemon with very clear strengths and weaknesses are really fun to use. And just because a Pokemon is good in competitive doesn't necessarily mean it's good in Nuzlocke. I mean, have you ever used a Smeargle? A Nuzlocke versus an AI is a lot different than a competitive battle, though. A decently good player will know a Pokemon's strengths and weaknesses and know how to exploit them. That's not always true for the AI. The AI knows to use grass-type moves against Swampert, but doesn't really know to use what Blissey is really weak to. Now you might be thinking, hey, Blissey is weak to fighting-type moves. But that's not necessarily true. The AI will rather switch in a Pokemon with Focus Blast onto a Blissey than a Pokemon with Stab Return. Blissey is weak to physical attacks and not to fighting type moves. A Focus Blast on a Blissey will actually usually not deal that much damage. It's important to understand how much of a specially defensive beast Blissey actually is. Just look at this clip from my Blissey in the Bloody Platinum Elite Four taking a full power stab rain boosted water spout from the special attack beast Kyogre. You can't win. It's over, Cynthia. I think it's pretty easy to say that it's impossible for the AI to kill Blissey with special attacks. It just can't do it. But that's not quite enough of a reason to ban Blissey just yet. Like I said, Blissey on paper has below average offensive stats, but there's two other factors that kind of push Blissey over the line for me. Firstly, Blissey has a fantastic offensive move pool. It has access to Ice Beam, Shadow Ball, Psychic, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Charge Beam. Not only do those provide Blissey with amazing coverage in the late game once you have access to those TMs, but those moves have another little thing in common. They all have an extra added effect. Psychic can drop special defense, Charge Beam can raise your special attack, etc. Blissey gets Serene Grace, which doubles the chance for all of these effects to take place, meaning that Thunder has a 60% chance to paralyze, and Charge Beam will always raise your special attack. This means that the pink blob can set up charge beams on defensive opponents and just max out its special attack, or cripple sweepers with thunders. But even if you don't get Serene Grace Blissey, you'll get Natural Cure, which in a hardcore Nuzlocke where you're not allowed to use items in battle, that means you can even deal with Blissey's toxic weakness. And getting Soft Boiled in its move pool means that in hardcore Nuzlocke you can always just heal up your Blissey if it's in trouble. You can recover insane amounts of HP with Soft Boiled that heals 50% of your HP, which on a Blissey is quite a lot of HP points. This makes Stall Blissey another extremely viable build in Nuzlocke, especially because the AI just doesn't have the strategy to play around defensive Pokemon that well. When you start to run a Blissey, that shapes the entirety of your run from that point onwards. You start to look at trainer battles, especially gym fights or other boss battles, much differently. You look at the list of Pokemon that trainer has, and you can cross off every single Pokemon that doesn't have physical attacks. You move on to physical attackers and realize that Blissey is actually pretty good at dealing with physical attacks that aren't super effective as well. Watch this clip of Blissey taking a Protein Greninja Gunk Shot in the Rising Ruby Elite Four. There's no way Greninja KOs me. It is stab, by the way, because it's protein. Oof, that fucking crit into poison. Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Are you actually fucking kidding me? What is these fucking hacks, dude? That feel when Blissey's gonna fucking die. Holy shit, are you kidding me? Oh my fucking god, dude. Holy shit. It's a beast, and its massive HP stat just lets it take even these hits. Blissey can also handle defensive Pokemon by either stalling them out because it's just more defensive than them, or by setting up charge beams or other attacks that allow them to get whittled down more. Psychic and Shadow Ball come to mind here. So after crossing all of those Pokemon off your opponent's team list, there's not that much left for you to deal with. You have 5 slots on your team to do that. Blissey can really break a game for you. I've used Blissey in 3 different hardcore Nuzlockes of enhanced ROMs that make the game a lot harder and makes enemy teams even more fierce. In Rising Ruby, Bloody Platinum, and Storm Silver, I had a Blissey on my final Elite Four team that won the game. Not only is Blissey strong, but it's also extremely easy to find complements for Blissey and build a composition around it. You have a large chunk of the type chart covered by the fact that most water and electric type attackers are special attackers. Pretty much the bulk of physical attackers that you have to deal with in Nuzlocke are normal types, flying types, poison types, and fighting types. Fighting types are covered by the abundance of flying types that you get in Nuzlocke, and poison, normal, and flying types are dealt with any of the physically defensive rock types that you get, like Roggenrola or Geodude. I even managed to get the infamous Skarmbliss combo in both Rising Ruby and Bloody Platinum, and Skarmy plus Blissey is, especially in Nuzlocke, really just an absolutely insane combo. Blissey teaches us pretty important lessons about Nuzlocke. Things like typing and being an all-rounder, being able to deal with everything on its own, and having a lot of resistances isn't really the only thing that makes a Pokemon good. Being extremely good at one thing is sometimes enough to break the game. Move pools and ability synergies are extremely valuable, and it also teaches us about constructing your team around a core Pokemon and covering its weaknesses, which is a really important technique in Nuzlocke team building. I've had the luck of playing a lot of ROM hacks where Chansey or Blissey is actually a more obtainable encounter than in the base games, so you might not run into Happiny or Chansey that often in your own Nuzlocke. But if you do, maybe catch it and get a taste for that insane amount of power that Blissey provides. Or maybe ask yourself, how much do I really want to win?